What's up, everybody? JC, welcome back to the show. We took a week off last week at Barely Qualified Picks. As I mentioned in our last episode, I was heading out on a heli skiing trip, and I'm working on that travel log to share with all of you, including a pretty sweet 90s ski montage taking you through the best clips from every day. Shout out to Insta360. I did use the X5 cam the entire time I was there, and it was dope. John, how are you? Tell me how life is in Beaverton, Oregon.
I'm good, man. Things have been good. Pretty chill and relaxed. Still celebrating, as you can very well see.
That's right. For those who are listening and not watching, John is wearing his newly minted Super Bowl 60 Seattle Seahawks championship t-shirt. Good on you, John.
And it feels so good to wear. I have one from the Seahawks' other Super Bowl championship. This will go on a hanger right next to it because I'm weird like that, and this will probably be the only time I wear this shirt. But I'm just gonna do me. But yeah, everything else has been great. Really enjoyed the last couple weeks with the Olympics. We're marching forward towards baseball in what is hopefully an exciting Mariners season, even if I do think the Dodgers are probably just going to spend their way to another World Series because $450 million in annual payroll gets you that. But yeah, man, things are good. What kind of windbreakers did you have? Were they like green and yellow? You mentioned the 90s montage.
Oh, no. I just mean I'm going to put some 90s music to it, but it may not feel that 90s. But I will say credit to our guides. They wear a pretty sick like neon yellow and light blue outfit that does have a little bit of 90s vibe to it. You brought up the Olympics. We're definitely going to start with the Olympics. We've got plenty to talk about. I want to talk about that gold medal men's hockey game against Canada, both the men and the women picking up gold, both of them over the Canadians, which was really incredible for U.S. hockey in general, really incredible for the men as they finally get over the hump against the Canadians in a game that really, really matters. I know you have a couple things that you want to talk about. We both watched a lot of Olympics. After we talk about the Olympics, we'll get to the NFL because the free agency cycle is in full swing. There's plenty to talk about there. And then as you and I were talking about offline, we're going to finish the conversation talking a little bit of WWE, where the brand is, what storylines are still resonating with you. It's been an interesting couple of years for the WWE. We'll make that last in case, some listeners aren't as interested in professional wrestling, but, it's something that you and I grew up with. It's obviously a big part of, kind of culture today. It's gotten really big, like I said, over the last few years. But the brand may not be as strong today as it was 2 years ago at this time. And we'll talk a lot more about that. But let's start with the Olympics. First, tell me, it was an early up. Did you get up to watch the U.S. men's gold medal game live?
I had poker the night before. Ooh. And there is a hand that I had to have explained to me where we play a fun game called the Deuce 7 game. If you win with Deuce 7 on a hand that at least goes to the flop, everybody has to pay you 3 big blinds, which is always fun and encourages action.
I picked up 2 of those last time I played with you guys.
You did, and it was great.
It's almost better than winning a normal hand.
But you know what's better than winning just a 2-7? Going all in when you have a pair of 7s with 2-7 on the flop and you crack pocket kings on a rivered 2.
Wow.
The worst part is not remembering it and having to have a buddy tell you about it because you had a few too many bourbons. So short answer, I did not get up early to watch that hockey game.
Gotcha. Well, I did, and it was absolutely electric. Now going into this game, even though the U.S. has been developmentally behind Canada, I mean, let's be really honest. Hockey is Canada's winter pastime, and it has infiltrated the U.S. over decades, and it has become one of the big 4 American sports. But it is not football. It is not basketball. In many ways, it's not even baseball. And the U.S. toppling Canada for a gold medal was a really big deal. It's one of the reasons why the NHL was pushed to allow NHL players to come back to the Olympics for the first time since 2014. And coming into this game, the U.S. was a plus 105 underdog. So it was almost even money either way. The Canadians were definitely respected, but there was no assumption that the Canadians would win. And through 2.5 periods, it could have gone really either way. And then a controversial call happens. There is a U.S. line change. And during that line change, there are too many men on the ice. There just are. This is not a gray area. It's a black or white penalty. The U.S. had too many men on the ice. The officials somehow missed it. The U.S. doesn't give up a power play. And then seconds later, Jack Hughes, who ends up winning the game in overtime, takes a high stick to the face, loses 1.5 teeth, like how hockey. And that penalty is called. He sits out for a solid 30 seconds or so before he comes back on the ice, how hockey. And then the battle continues. The U.S. isn't able to capitalize on their power play. Then they give up a high stick of their own. Canada kills the rest of the U.S. power play, is on power play for almost the rest of the third period, isn't able to put one away. Huge credit to the cohesiveness of the U.S. unit that was on the ice. And then it goes to overtime. And as we all know, the U.S. wins this thing in overtime on a beautiful goal by Jack Hughes. And if you watch the freeze frame of it, it looks like he's on a breakaway. Why does it look like he's on a breakaway? Because we're playing 3-on-3 hockey. And I'll tell you, John, this just felt like the worst way to end such an epic battle to me. The NHL, hockey is a 5-on-5 sport. And in the Stanley Cup playoffs, like there are regular season games that will go to a 3-on-3 overtime to get it over quickly because they play so many games. I can accept that even if I don't love it. I would rather they just finish games in a tie and go back to the way it was years ago, to be totally honest with you. But in the Stanley Cup playoffs, they don't do that. They play 5-on-5 and then they go to a shootout if necessary, like Mighty Ducks style shootout. Why do we not have that in the Olympics? And this is not something that has been around for a long time. This was a change that was made for this Olympic Games. And I'll tell you, I just hated it. I hated it for Canada. If the U.S. had lost in reverse fashion, I would have been outraged that we lost in a 3-on-3. It's like not playing 11-man football. It's like playing 8-man football. It's not a different version of the same game. It's essentially a different game. And I just didn't like that. I'm thrilled with the gold. Didn't love how we got it in overtime, at least a little bit. What do you think of that?
It definitely feels odd that you go through all of this effort to get the NHL to allow players back in for the first time, and then in the most critical moments, you're taking the best at what they do in the world in their prime off of the ice. Why would you do that? It's like in the NBA finals, you don't turn it into the big three, right? Or the big three league. I mean,
it's just a great analog.
It devalues the competitive nature. And I have seen some highlights. I watched that that overtime, almost called it extra time. That's a different sport. And there were a couple incredible plays defensively for the Americans before that goal. But it just felt empty. It felt like something was off, and it didn't feel like all of the just Olympics hockey that we had seen so far. And I get that the Olympics are different. International sports are different. You look at basketball and they have a trapezoid instead of a rectangle. Like there's just little nuances, but to fundamentally change the game to that extent, it feels egregious to me.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more, actually. And you know, I watched a lot of Olympics, but I will say I love Europe. You know how much I love Europe, and I love traveling over there. But the time thing was just hard for me because as a constant consumer of the news, my phone was always popping up with what happened throughout the day. You know, I'd get up in the morning and I would have a list of articles that I couldn't avoid if I wanted to read any other news that were telling me the outcomes of essentially all of the events that I cared about. So when it would come on, you know, I would kind of like poke around and be like, oh, I know what's going to happen there, but I wanted to see this. Half the time I'd already seen a clip of it because it had been posted online with the article. That was a little tough for me. I know that there's really no way around that. And I guess that's better than when the Winter Olympics are over in Asia or, you know, somewhere like that where it's like truly the other, you know, the other side of the world, the other side of the clock. And that can make it tough. But yeah, you know, it was a little tough for me, although I did watch a good bit of Olympics. How much Olympics did you end up watching? I know going into it, I was a bit more hungry for the Olympics than you were. How did it play out in your household?
So we had the Olympics typically on in the morning, and that was kind of the annoying thing is if you wanted to watch anything live, you were catching it in the morning and the early afternoon, before noon. And then afternoon, it felt like everything was replays. I watched a good amount of downhill skiing, watched a little bit of half pipe, but a lot of the replays I caught after waking up, after seeing the news, after seeing comment lists, and you have to go watch this performance. You have to go see this half pipe run from Eileen Gu, which, by the way, her gold medal winning half pipe run, incredible. And
unreal.
Dude, to see somebody do something and realize in the moment how good what they just did was upon finishing. And like for me as a casual spectator, I have no idea how technically difficult all of the flips and spins and perfect technical landing she did. But her just exhalation of joy when she landed. And I'm talking about Eileen Gu. We'll talk about Alyssa Liu. It's just incredible. And then the other one that I did watch was weirdly the gold medal match for men's curling.
I watched zero curling. But I did take a photo of the curling center in Kelowna when I was there, because I was walking to our wine bar for dinner one night, and there was this massive curling puck disc. I don't even know what they call it. Stone. And I was like, holy shit, curling center. We are in Canada.
Yeah, curling, man. I didn't expect to enjoy it, but the just chess match back and forth, making sure when you have the hammer that you really maximize that. That's when you're the last throw in an end. You know, thinking early on in the early ends, you're going for 1 point here, 1 point there, thinking about guards and blocks. And we were at a play place so my kids could play in giant play structures, and they had it on, and I was glued to that thing for the entire second half of the match. And there was a throw that Canada had over Great Britain in the ninth end that all but won it for them. That was just, I actually think...
Wasn't there also some controversy with Canada? Like, I was following that loosely. Did they cheat? Did they not cheat? Do you have enough context to explain what that was about?
From everything I've read, this came from a match earlier in the tournament. This was not the gold medal match.
Correct.
You have to release the stone before a certain point in the green line. It's a rule that is broken here and there, but casuals of the sport are up in arms saying, how could they do this? How could they let this happen? By the way, Sweden did the same thing in the same match. But hardcores, all 12 of them that love curling around the globe, don't seem to be as upset. And like, this is just part of the sport. This is one of those things that happens. And it's generally a self-officiated sport too, even though they have referees, which is kind of wild, but you know, it is what it is.
Who was your MVP of the Olympics? Like, who stood out to you when you think about all the performances? What do you remember most?
Alyssa Liu, hands down.
Because of the hair?
Well, the hair was awesome, but the energy...
You look like a WWE star.
A little bit, yeah, I can see that. But, you know, the energy and joy that she brought to women's freestyle figure skating was infectious. Her shouting into the camera afterwards, that's what I'm effing talking about. And bringing just spunk to a sport that 4 years ago was full of doping, full of 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. And, you know, from everything I've read, a lot of people were worried that women's freestyle ice skating was done. It was toast. And then I saw this other clip where a Japanese skater younger than Alyssa Liu had a great performance, but she thought she fell off the medal stand and she was heartbroken. And, you know, they're announcing their scores. They're announcing the standings in Italian. Italian's not a very commonly spoken language in Asia. No. So she sees that there's a 3 next to her name, and she looks over at Alyssa Liu, and the camera pans over, and Alyssa's like nodding her head. And like, to see what this woman means to this sport and means to this next generation, like, I'm new to all of this. I don't know that much, but it makes me happy. It warms my heart. And then I went back and watched her performance, and like, holy shit, the crowd was explosive. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it and listen to how she had the crowd in the palm of her hand, just nailing these technically impressive flips, spins, maneuvers, all of this stuff, and having the time of her life. And then kind of the opposite of Eileen Gu, not really realizing what she'd done until after the music stopped. It was just incredible. And it's one of those things where when I look back on the 2026 Olympics, that's what I'm going to remember.
Gotcha. Well, I've got my MVP, and I'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk about my LVP, and let's stay in figure skating. As an American, I was a little bit disappointed with our guy, Ilya Malinin. That's the name. And not because he didn't take home the gold, but because of how he reacted in not taking home the gold. First off, this guy did a program in his final skate that he didn't have to do. He could have played it a little bit safer. And, it's like being up 3 touchdowns and then deciding you're going to throw the ball every down. Run the ball. Run the ball, win the game. That's what you're there for. You're going to have many more performances where you can, go above and beyond and try new things and really impress people. So he blew it, and that's fine. But then he came out afterwards and talked about all the pressure and the mental health challenges and all that. The guy's nickname is Quad God, and that's not the problem. The problem is he gave it to himself. What are you, Kobe? You can't give yourself a nickname like Quad God and then be like, oh my God, all the pressure, it's so unfair. I'm sorry. You set yourself up for that. Then you made a bad strategic choice, and then you paid the price. Just own it. Just own it. And my issue is, as a parent of children, I don't want people to take that cop out every time. Just be like, yo, I made a bad decision. In the NFL, you don't get to do that. In the NBA, you really don't get to do that. It's like, I took the shot and it didn't go in. I should have passed the ball. Or that was my shot. I took the shot and it didn't go in. I've got to live with it. I just don't love how, and God, I'm going to sound old, how this younger generation tends to default to, at times, all the mental health pressure was just unfair to me. No, I mean, you're on the biggest stage. You want all the credit and the glory when you win. You got to do a little bit better of a job dealing with the loss, Ilya.
You are an Olympian. You are held to the highest standards possible. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, own it. So let me talk about who was my MVP. And I don't even remember his name. I just remember having it on, and I hadn't read this. It was the Italian biathlete who went 20 for 20 in his gold medal round. And just he was automatic. And watching him set up, fire, hit every single target, and rip that off. And then to your point, the pure joy that he had and the joy of the Italian crowd watching him accomplish that. I remember them saying at the time that he wasn't the favorite, right? He wasn't not a contender to win the gold, but he even said afterwards he had never gone 20 for 20 before. And he did it in the most important moment of his life. And that's what the Olympics is all about.
He hit flow state. And if you've never hit flow state, you can kind of feel it in the moment where everything's just clicking for you in a way that it normally doesn't. And you're almost running on instinct. You have these kind of little adjustments here and there that don't pop up every now and then. But it's just, I don't know if you've seen the F1 movie, which is somehow nominated for Best Picture. Those last,
I don't know. I get it.
But 10 movies is too many, is all I'll say.
It is too many.
We will have a discussion about the Oscars, I am sure, and I look forward to that. But, the end of that movie where he says, everything gets quiet and you just kind of drive.
Yeah,
that is how I imagine that feels.
You're flying.
You're flying.
Says, right?
You're right. He said you're flying, and there's nothing better than flow state.
Yeah. Well, I watched ski mountaineering. That was the one new sport. I was pleased with it.
You were really excited for that.
I was, but in a traditional ski mountaineering competition, they're very long, and it's a test of stamina and technicality. And these are so abbreviated that I couldn't help watching it going, these athletes are playing a different sport. It's like they're tennis players, and they're like, but you're going to play pickleball now. And we're going to call it the same thing, but it's really pickleball. And I don't know. It didn't hit me the same way that I was hoping it would. But, that's the reality of it. I think some of those are, and some of those aren't going to hit the way that you hope they do. I thoroughly enjoyed all of the freestyle skiing and snowboarding. Really got a lot of satisfaction out of the Olympics. I think for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 7.5 or an 8. I thought Italy did a great job, especially considering, they got a dump of snow up in the mountains when the Olympics first started, and then it was dry. And it didn't just stay dry, it actually got pretty darn warm up there. And, that's a whole nother conversation as well on climate change and what that's doing to our outdoor entertainment and, what that does to sports that rely on snow. But, I thought they did a great job keeping everything together, making sure that the athletes had proper tracks to participate on. And, ultimately, I thought the product was great. I thought NBC did a great job. Snoop Dogg was the MC of the Olympics, and I was, I love Snoop Dogg. But I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical of how that would go, and he knocked it out of the park. I thought the presentation and production was really strong.
Just wait till it's in his backyard. He's going to thrive in 2028.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg without a parka. That's gonna be chains out, bro. Like
he's gonna
100%.
shed his winter coat, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. That's a very well played. Very well played. Do you have anything else on the Olympics before we turn to our favorite sport in the world, the NFL?
My wife put us in for the lottery for 2028 tickets. She is full on take the kids, experience this. Whereas I'm looking at this summer like, well, Egypt and, some country is playing up in Seattle. Maybe we should go get those tickets and, it's a non-US game. Go see a World Cup game. So, we'll see how this summer.
Well, and I throw this at you. Paris hosted the last Summer Olympics a couple of years ago. And in those Paris Olympics, we saw a lot of hype going in. And then there were tons of tickets available, tons of hotels available. Now, this is Los Angeles. So maybe it's going to be different. But I personally would be reluctant.
Scalp City.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to spend top dollar after what happened in Paris. Paris is the most visited city in the world. People love going to Paris. You think people love going to LA? They love going to Paris. And yet, they really struggled to put butts in seats. You may have an easier time getting tickets day of.
Oh, I fully agree. My point was our family is very much looking into 2028, and I'm with you. We will just get tickets to the events we want to go to and go that route because I'm definitely going to want to see some sprinting. I'm definitely going to want to see some flag football. Weirdly, I'll go to that gold medal game.
What are you willing to spend to go to a World Cup game?
To a World Cup game? So,
yeah.
Caveat, I don't need to see the U.S. I want to see an actual just World Cup game, and it can be against two teams that probably won't even qualify.
Really?
I just want to go to a World Cup game.
You want to go to a group game, period.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that's what's available to me. Again, it's, for our listeners, I'm so sorry. Seattle World Cup matches. It's Egypt and somebody else. Egypt and Belgium. Okay.
Actually, that could be pretty great.
That will be a great game. Mo Salah, still, the latter end of his prime. But
well,
still in his
not
prime.
just that, but Mo Salah has been on the outs with Liverpool, and you don't have to make too many assumptions to think that he's going to be very motivated to put on a show for his country.
Well, and then the flip side, Belgium, you have to wonder if their golden generation is kind of over with Kevin De Bruyne aging out and all of their incredible players.
Hazard still on that team?
If he is, he's old.
He is
but
old,
that's the major thing is the last three World Cups felt like the first one, Belgium was young and they had their future ahead of them. The second one, they're in their prime. The third one, they're in their prime, but oh, geez, this feels like their shot. And then now we're at the point where that could be a good game. And, if I can get into that game for 200, 250, that's at Lumen. So there's going to be 70,000 seats available.
And neither one of those countries is going to travel strong. They're not
big. At all.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't, that's kind of where I'm looking to get in.
I might join you for that.
Yeah.
That could be fun. All right, let's talk about the NFL, John. We are into free agency pretty heavily, and let's start with the Seahawks. The Super Bowl champions have some decisions to make. The first one at running back, and there's been a lot of discussion about Kenneth Walker. Kenny obviously was Superman in the Super Bowl, and I don't think we would have a ring this year if it wasn't for his performance throughout the playoffs. He had some really big games down the stretch. That said, The running back market is taking an interesting shape. The Jets have said that they are not going to let Breece Hall go. They're either going to get a new deal done with him or they will use one of the tags, the transition tag or the franchise tag. Now, we almost never see the transition tag used because, you're essentially guaranteeing a big salary, but then also if that player goes and gets a better deal from somebody else that you don't want to match, you get no compensation from them leaving. So it's a bit of a gamble for teams. I would expect that the Jets are going to get a new deal done with him before the season starts. If they don't, they'll put him on the franchise tag. And he's one of the few running backs that I would say is probably worth it. The Jets have like $80 million in cap room. They can certainly afford it this year and then punt on the decision another year if they have to. We saw Javonte Williams in Dallas sign a 3-year, $24 million deal, so 8 per. And Javonte Williams has had a lot of injury issues, but so has Kenny. And when I think about the two of them, they're really not that far apart to me. When you look at it in fantasy terms, Javonte got a lot more touches, and when he was healthy, he was more productive. A much more high-flying offense. That was the prerogative in Dallas this year. But if Javonte Williams gets $8 million, how much can you really give to Kenny a year? Can you give him 12? Can you give him 14? ATN is still on the market. And then there's one other guy on the market that you mentioned today offline that I didn't even realize was available, Rico Dowdle. He had a up to $6 million contract last year, only $1.5 million of it guaranteed. Now, obviously, he played really well, so I would expect he cashed a lot of those incentives. But given the choice between Dowdle, Kenny, and then we had and ATN was the other guy. I'm having a hard time seeing the Seahawks breaking the bank for Kenny. I just am.
It's going to be really hard to because you got to pay the dark side, and we are very fortunate that Sam Darnold has 2 more years left on his deal until that decision needs to be made. But what it comes down to is Zach Charbonnet he's probably going to be back. If not week 1, he'll be back in October, I bet.
How long until he's 100%, though? You know how those injuries are.
Yeah, I agree. So you need a starter to be there in place to really carry the load. You need I'm not saying we go get him because he is a free agent, but somebody they wanted Nick Chubb to start until Joe Mixon was healthy in Houston, although we know how that went with Joe Mixon.
Well, we don't know how that went. We just know that he never played.
We know that he never played. You're right.
Yeah.
And behind Zach Charbonnet, I don't think you have that answer on the roster right now. You could go into free agency and find that, and then is somebody like Najee Harris for, I don't know, $3 million, $4 million, knowing that he's coming off a blown knee. Alluring?
Right there. Don't you dare suggest Najee Harris could be a serviceable player on a football team. Ask any Pittsburgh Steeler fan how they feel about Najee Harris. It's funny. The Steelers went through multiple years where it was can't we just get Jaylen Warren on the field? And then this year, Jaylen Warren starts, and it's can't we just get Kenneth Gainwell on the field? Get out of here with that Najee Harris bullshit.
So I think that is the interesting part, though, is do you trade for somebody like you just listed to try and come in and be that bell cow back? Or do you spend a 2nd or a 3rd rounder and go after somebody like Jadarian Price, Roman Hembley, Katron Allen, who could potentially come in, and that solves your contract issue because they're going to come in on a cheaper deal.
Yeah, I love Katron Allen. As you know, we were both in the building for that Big Ten championship game 2 years ago between the Ducks and Penn State, and Katron Allen was just a beast. Things fell off the rails for Penn State this year, but he's still an incredibly talented back. I love Hemby. I think Roman Hemby could be a great back for the Seahawks. And, you're just reinforcing the point that we knew before the season started, during the season, we've known since the season ended that the reality of the NFL hasn't changed. It's hard to pay big money to a running back. And even when they win you a Super Bowl, you can't pay for past performance. You have to pay for the future. You can't pay for good vibes. And that's why I suspect Kenny Walker won't be a Seahawk next year, along with one other guy that I think they can't pay for good vibes, and that's Cooper Kupp. How do you feel about Cooper Kupp not being a Seahawk next year after, playing a linchpin role in that receiving room, especially in the Super Bowl when Jackson Smith and Jigba went out and we didn't know if he was coming back or not?
So last point I want to make with Kenny Walker is how much
Insider we trust.
Well, no, I mean, my major thing is Schneider had an interview today or yesterday with Mike Florio where the writing was kind of on the wall. He wants to bring him back, but like you said, the reality is what the reality is. He's going to command a nice salary because he was a Super Bowl MVP. And then the other element of it is how much was his ability to do damage in the postseason a matter of splitting carries with Charbonnet all year. So he was a lot fresher than any of his cohorts. It's the last point I wanted to make there. Moving to Cooper Kupp. What if he took the vet minimum? What if he wanted to stay in Seattle? Do you think he could go get a better deal elsewhere? Are there going to be other teams that
Well,
want
he has another year on this deal. That's the trouble. Is that they would have to restructure his deal, and then they would still end up paying a lot of money because the way his deal works this year, he's on about $1.5 million in guaranteed base salary, but then they pay him a $9 million roster bonus if he's on the roster past, I want to say like March 11th.
He's getting cut.
Yeah, he's getting cut, right? Like you're not paying Cooper Kupp $10 million this year. You just can't do that. That's
Also,
like 3% of the cap.
I think you don't want to give those reps to Kupp instead of Torrey Horton. You want him on the field growing, blossoming, and turning into a beast, along with A.J. Barner. I'm really excited for what A.J. Barner can be in this passing attack moving forward, more than just our tush-push guy and then a catch here and there. Like, I do see a world where he's much more involved on a down-to-down basis catching the football. And so do you have Cooper Kupp taking those snaps when you have young talent that could be taking them instead?
I couldn't agree with you more on Torrey Horton, especially. You know, he had some real flashes as a rookie. And if he takes another step forward, which, look, as a sophomore, there was a reason why they call it the sophomore slump. There are plenty of guys who take a step back in their second year before stepping forward again. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen. I think with the camaraderie and the coaching and everything that this Seahawks infrastructure offers, I think Torrey Horton has a great chance of taking another step forward. But it will be hard to get Cooper Kupp on the field when you have JSN, Shaheed, Torrey Horton, and I love Barner too. I don't necessarily think Barner is ever going to be the focal point of our offense. I don't think he'll be the second or third leading receiver. Agreed. But I do expect to see him more active in the passing game going forward. I expect that he will continue to run the tush pushes. Like, he's a very important player to this offense.
Agreed. Now, I do have one question while we are on wide receivers. JSN has been noted and came out and said, I don't see why I shouldn't be the highest paid wide receiver in the league. What do you think about that? If you had to pick between JSN, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, who would you be willing to give that highest paid nod to?
Well, I will tweak that question a little bit because I think the question is he in that class? You know the way the NFL works. It's an arms race. And so what you really want to see is if there are a few elite receivers that they're getting, that at any given time, they are one of them, the highest paid wide receiver in football. Do I think that JSN deserves a moment in the sun as the highest paid wide receiver in football? Abso-freaking-lutely. Is he the biggest? Is he the most prototypical wide receiver, one body? No. But he runs every route on the route tree. He could do everything Justin Jefferson does. Can Justin Jefferson do everything JSN does? I'm not sure. Jamar Chase, it's hard to argue against Jamar Chase. We've seen him have games where he has like 15 catches and he runs in the short and the intermediate. He runs deep. He does all of those things. So I won't argue that JSN is more worthy of being the highest paid receiver in the league, but I don't bristle at all at the thought of him being the highest paid receiver in the league for as long as that is until one of those other guys gets an extension that puts them in that top spot. I think he's earned that. I think he obviously did it with the numbers. It wasn't just coming through clutch and key moments. It was the volume too. And it's hard to argue with. We talked about all of the elite wide receivers that came out of Ohio State, and they are all still very elite. And of course, winning a Super Bowl is very contextual. It depends on who's around you, what city you're in. It's, there's a lot of luck to it. But at the same time, he is the most decorated at this point. And if you were asking me, would I trade him for any of those other guys? I wouldn't trade him for any other wide receiver in the league. And I'm sure that there's a little bit of Seattle bias in there. I can't get rid of that. But as objective as I try and be, I couldn't trade him. He just does everything. He is the focal point of our offense and the machine or the engine that makes our car go. And so, yeah, I mean, I think he's worth that. I also love that he came out and he said, doesn't have to happen right now. I know that I'm going to get mine. I think when you're talking about not just professional athletes, but anybody who feels like they have earned a payday, nobody wants to be told to wait. And he is saying, yeah, it's okay. I can wait. But when I get paid, I want to be number one. And I think that's fair.
And that will likely happen too. Just the way that it all escalates, like you said, like an arms race. And money today is worth more than money tomorrow. Hopefully these guys are investing in the S&P 500 when they get their contract and they're taking advantage of the 15% year over year raise. And that way they are making more than the next person. But
yeah,
something tells me that might not be the case.
Let's talk about our sworn sports enemy, the San Francisco 49ers, for a second, because, we just talked about Sam Darnold. And, for all the things that Sam Darnold did in this season, in this playoff run, he didn't try to be the superhero. He let Kenny put on the cape. He didn't try and put it on. I think we talked about this, but I read an article where they were talking to Sam, and he was talking about how he had a complete mindset change when another former quarterback told him to think like a point guard and that you're not the shooting guard. You're not Michael Jordan. Your job is to be the distributor. And he really took that to heart. And we saw the benefits come from that as the Seattle Seahawks took home the championship this year. Sam is also on a really well-managed contract for the next couple of years. Brock Purdy isn't necessarily. He is going to eat up more and more cap space over the next few years. I think you said by 2028, a couple seasons from now, he's going to be eating up almost 20% of the 49ers cap space. Now, Mac Jones filled in for him very admirably this year, and his contract expired. If the 49ers were able to trade Brock Purdy and sign Mac Jones to a Sam Darnold type deal, freeing up massive dollars. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Brock Purdy got a big deal. I think he makes twice what Sam makes. If they could pull that off, should they? I mean, they love Brock Purdy, and I am so impressed by what Brock has done going from the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, having to wait to get his shot, getting his shot, and then essentially never giving the reins back with the exception of injury time. At the same time, we lived through the Russell Wilson era. And when Russell Wilson was on a rookie contract, the Seahawks front office had a lot of money to spend on the players around him, especially on the defense. Then when Russell Wilson got his big mega deal, those dollars dried up and the Seahawks went from Super Bowl contender to Super Bowl hopeful to Super Bowl also ran. What should the 49ers do if they have a magic wand here and they can move Purdy and keep Mac Jones? Should they?
Yeah, I mean, it really is interesting. You look at how this deal is structured, and this year, Brock Purdy will chew up 8% of the salary cap. Next year, it'll be 9.6%, and then it goes, like you said, 2028, 17%, 2029, 19.8%. It escalates so quickly, and if Howie Roseman were the GM, I would say, well, obviously they're going to renegotiate, and they're going to resettle the money, and they're going to make it right and figure it out. But one thing that I will just say, Mac Jones does have one more year on his deal. Yes, okay. But his cap hit is 1%. And I think it's really hard to not look at that delta and look at, the Niners are not a complete team right now. They need to go spend. And we're really fortunate where we're at with Sam, where we got 2 years left and Jalen Milroe's probably not the answer. But, we have the money to go extend the dark side and make sure that Mike McDonald has the defense that allows his schemes and what he does go. Now, Kyle Shanahan's an offensive-minded coach, so their priorities are going to be in a different place. He's probably going to want somebody like Purdy who prioritize somebody who can run the system. But like you said, we've seen Mac Jones can do that. Against good competition, too. It wasn't just a bunch of patsies that he beat like the Patriots this year. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing shakes out. I also can't help but wonder, what are other teams willing to trade for Mac Jones? Can you get a first and a second for him? Maybe a couple second rounders? That's the other thing, is what's your opportunity cost to potentially move Mac Jones in the next couple months?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great point, and I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out. I expect that they will stick with Purdy. They'll keep Jones for another year, but that decision is going to come, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. The salary cap is a fickle mistress, and it is not easy to navigate and keep teams together long. I think we have the same question with Sam Darnold. When Sam's contract runs out in 2 years, we're going to have a lot of data. John Schneider's going to have a lot of data. What's he willing to pay? He learned, I think, a lot of lessons from Russell Wilson. Now, as you've said to me several times, he also made the most of that situation because once it was time to get off Russell, look at everything that we got back for him. This team wouldn't be the unit that it is without all of the pieces that came back by sending Russ to Denver. That said, he made the decision to move off of him. Will he make the same decision with Sam Darnold in 2 years?
I mean, it's not just the Sam Darnold thing, right? They let Pete Carroll go at the perfect time. They traded Geno at the perfect time. Like, Schneider's on a heater.
Yeah.
They traded DK at the perfect time. He's on a heater, and I have a really hard time thinking that Sam Darnold is going to be here in 2 years unless he's willing to say, yeah, you can keep giving me the mid-market contract because that's what I'm worth, and I'm just stoked that I've proved all the doubters wrong, and I'm happy to be making an incredible salary. And maybe that's where Sam's going to be at. Maybe he just wants to play for a contender. Brady took pay cuts for years to put a team around him when he could have taken more. So there are people who were like that. I believe Sam Darnold is also the first Super Bowl winning quarterback from USC, and maybe that's feather in his cap too. But it's also going to come down to who's available at the time, when Sam is, do we keep him or do we move him? It's also been fascinating. Russell Wilson was, one of the first quarterbacks that really showed that you needed a cheap rookie deal to win, and that kind of defined the 2010s. Sam Darnold's kind of the first guy that showed you don't need one of these super veterans like your Mahomes, Stafford, Brady, or a rookie. You can win with a mid-market deal. So, I don't know. There's a little part of me that loves John Schneider all that much more for showing that different paradigms can succeed in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, John, I've got 2 more NFL headlines that made me go, that I want to talk through with you before we move on to the WWE. The first one is, apparently Cleveland isn't done with Deshaun Watson yet, and they're going to let Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders compete for the job next year. This is weird to me. I can't believe Deshaun Watson is still in the league. He's on a guaranteed contract. So on the one hand, I understand that that's a big dead cap hit to just let him go. On the other hand, are they really prepared to bring Deshaun Watson back and start him? And then if they do let these guys compete for the job, is there any way that Shedeur Sanders can compete with Deshaun Watson? Because put aside all of the off-field stuff, when Deshaun Watson was healthy, he was one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the league. Shedeur Sanders, I'm going to step out on a limb and say, is not.
Sorry. That is Pro Bowl quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Thank you very much.
That's an indictment, not a testament, by the way.
With Deshaun Watson, it's really fascinating because the dead cap hit for them to have cut him in any of these last years was like 110 million, then 92 million, then 72 million. And because they gave him this fully guaranteed contract, the first ever, and great on Kirk Cousins for getting his money out of 24 games with the Falcons and $100 million. But what Jimmy Haslam allowed and forced the Browns into doing with Deshaun Watson was nothing short of criminal. Deshaun Watson, I'm also not sure he has anything left in the tank after blowing his Achilles out twice in a 1-year span. Because remember, he re-ruptured it while he was rehabbing to try and come back. He hasn't been on a football field in 2 years. I don't know, man. If you're Myles Garrett, I really hope you're sleeping comfy in those silk sheets and you're enjoying your time with Chloe Kim, because you're not in a good place in terms of any kind of chance to succeed. And good on Kevin Stefanski for getting out of there, getting a golden parachute, and now being with an organization that maybe actually wants to try and win, because the Browns are a dumpster fire. And if this is their solution, woo boy, Dylan Gabriel, I hope you got paid.
But he didn't, right? He was on a third round rookie contract. And that's the other thing is they've just invested so many picks into this quarterback position to be where they are. It's just mind boggling. And it's only something that a true dumpster fire of a franchise would do. And that's why it's
Third,
so on brand for Cleveland.
third round rookie contract, but you got to think that's probably like a $3 million signing bonus. Oregon probably gave him 2.5. I know Cam Scatabo had like 3.5 as his signing bonus, and he was also a third rounder. Oregon probably gave Dylan Gabriel a good amount of chunk of change via NIL. He played for Oklahoma.
It's pretty early though. Like the salaries hadn't escalated. I bet you he got like 2.5, and then it says the full value of his rookie deal is $6.2 million. So not bad. And that's if he's able to play it out, right? It's a 4-year contract. He's done 1 year of that. It's a base salary of 1.5 a year. So, hey,
So you're not
$1.5
wrong,
million to watch him battle it out. That ain't bad.
if he doesn't get cut.
If he doesn't get cut, correct. All right. The last made me go, headline. So the NFL Rules Committee has been meeting, and there's been a lot of chatter about one play in particular, or what happened after one play in the Super Bowl, where Josh Jobe took a swing and punched Stephon Diggs in the face mask. And you can watch the replay. He did it. And I think, I'm a little challenged with that because the hand fighting and the hands to the face after a play, that tends to happen. But look, they could have called a flag on that. Now they're talking about whether on plays like that, situations like that, whether the booth should be able to put a flag on the field. It would be the first time ever in the NFL that a flag would come from the booth. What do you think about that?
I think if it's something egregious like this and the refs somehow miss it, you have ejections in other sports that come after video replay, and there's been a lot of this, but also be willing to go both ways, right? How many times have there been clear and egregious calls that should have been no calls, or a receiver trips and falls down and it's called a pass interference, even though no contact was made? Be willing to go both ways.
Well, you're introducing a slippery slope. See, I would argue if you're going to do this, don't let it go any further. It seems like we're on different sides of this issue, because my thing is I want the officials on the field calling the game. And yes, when we have these split-second things, we go to replay, I don't necessarily dislike replay in sports. But I also think it was a purer version when it was left up to the officials and their eyes on the field to determine what happened on a play. And this just worries me. If the whole thing is going to be officiated from the booth, I just don't love that.
Well, you're a huge AI fan, though. Give it another year and Claude will be handling all this for us.
I am a huge AI fan, and I will say I vibe coded my first app from start to finish. I've got it up in test flight on the App Store. It is pretty sick. I'm a big fan of Claude, but I stopped short. I have a red line at Claude officiating my NFL games. I'll be really honest about that. John, can I take a quick detour to the NBA before we talk about the WWE? Because when we were talking about Kirk Cousins getting his $100 million payday, it reminded me of an article that I read this week about Luc Longley. Do you remember who Luc Longley is?
No, I thought you were going to talk about
was
Ben
the starting
Simmons.
center, big Aussie center for the second of the Bulls' 3 championships in that Jordan 6 title run. And Luc Longley was a great center, but unfortunately he had a degenerative ankle condition. He went to the Knicks. Things got worse. They ended up paying him out $21 million on 3 remaining years that he wasn't able to play. It ended up being, as he said, he was a compensation claim. And he talked about how much he hated that and how it stuck with him for years. That on top of the fact that his career, which was built on winning and camaraderie and playing for stakes that really mattered, devolved into not really playing for a not competitive team in the Knicks and then getting paid off to go away. I don't really have a question on this. It was just refreshing because I've always thought, you want to earn your keep. And I've always wondered, isn't it hard for these guys when they've been paid all of this money to perform at a level that, a tiny handful of people around the world can perform at on that stage, and then they lose it, and yet they're still paid, but it's, you're being paid to go away. Like, that has to sting a little bit. And for the first time, I read an article where an athlete I know and respect and loved watching said just that. And that was really refreshing for me.
I also think just back then, they cared so much more. I mean, you look at what the salaries back then are compared to now, and even if you adjust for inflation, salaries for
different scale,
a seventh man, coming off the bench dwarfs a lot of starters back then. It's insane. And so you also look at what the All-Star game used to be in the 90s and the early aughts, and like they cared about winning in such a deep way. It was integral, where now you got a lot of kids who come out and they want to maximize their brand, they want to maximize their earnings, and that's their focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. John, the other NBA thing I wanted to mention was the All-Star game. I got to give it to the NBA. I was in Canada. I had a chance to catch part of the All-Star game. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the competition was great, and that's really what it came down to. We've been talking for years, how do you make these players care? And there was a competitive fire on All-Star Sunday that I haven't seen in years, and I loved to freaking see it.
Can we also talk about our boy Dame Lillard winning the 3-point contest
in large part? About that? I still don't know how I feel about the fact that he's not playing. Like, should he even be eligible to participate?
He's on the roster. He's taking a roster spot. Yes. The All-Star game is supposed to be fun, Denny. The weekend is supposed to be fun. And you've got Dame giving us a glimpse of what next year is supposed to be. And he only won because he hit that logo 3 for 4 points. Otherwise, he would have lost to Devin Booker in the final. Like, he earned his way. It wasn't this janky way to go. He put up 29 in that final round. And man, between him, Donovan Clingan, and Yang Hansen, thank you all of the Chinese viewers who made Yang Hansen playing in the Rising Stars game possible. And then Denny Advia playing in actual All-Star Sunday. Like, I have a lot of optimism for next year. It could be a fun year. We could push for the 6th seed.
I'm going to put a slight pin in that for a second. I think the issue that I have is that he tied Larry Bird and Craig Hodges as the only 3-time winners of the 3-point contest. But both of those guys were playing when that happened. If he ends up being the first 4-time winner, I don't know. Like, I'm going to put an asterisk on it. Seems like you won't, but I am.
You beat the competition.
All right, that's fair. All right, John, let's talk about the Blazers for just a second, because you're right. Next year could be a really fun year for the Blazers. This year was looking like a really fun year for the Blazers, despite the injuries. But man, the injuries continue to stack up. Shadon Sharp is now out for another 4 to 6 weeks. He had missed 6 games due to a calf strain. Now he's got a broken left fibula that's going to keep him out for a while. Denny Avdi didn't play tonight against the Timberwolves. It seems like maybe we've seen the best of this Blazers season. It's not that there's not plenty of great basketball to watch. There definitely is. But as a Blazer fan, I'm starting to feel my hopes maybe regulate a little bit on even whether they can make the play-in this year.
Bro, if they make the playoffs, our pick goes to Chicago in a loaded draft. Like, I am perfectly fine where, like, hey, we've shown a lot of talent. Our young guys have grown a lot. It's mid-February. I feel really good with Tiago Splitter potentially being our head coach next year. Let's stop winning for a little bit, so maybe we could have a puncher shot at one of these top 3 guys. And if not them, we keep our pick for this year. And then next year, we make that hopefully leap to pushing for a 6 seed, pushing for a 5 seed, everybody getting better. You have Tiago getting a full off season, knowing he's going to be running the team. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, this has been playing with house money. This has been a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in the universe is talking to you, I just got a push notification on my phone from the NBA app that the Blazers are only down 3 with 3 minutes to go against the Timberwolves tonight. So, maybe I should hold on hope a little bit longer. But look, the NBA is in a great place right now. I'm really excited down the stretch. We were watching the Nuggets-Blazers game the other night. The Blazers lost by, I think, 40 or so to the Nuggets. And
Nuggets put up 157 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, when Jokic and the Nuggets are humming, it's a beautiful thing to watch. Even when they're beating you, it's hard as a basketball fan not to appreciate his greatness and what he is able to do lifting an entire team to that level of play. It's just beautiful.
We were watching the Nuggets and the Warriors, and the Nuggets had all white jerseys, the Warriors had all black jerseys. So Nolan kept saying, "Are we rooting for the black guys or the white guys?" And I'm like, you can't say that.
Well, he's brown. He can.
Well, that's what I reflected on. Is I'm like, I'm the white feller here. That's fair.
Yeah, you are. You are. All right, John, let's talk about the WWE. You and I, both WWE fans growing up. I think like most people, you kind of ebb and flow. There was a long ebb for me. Got back into the brand through work a number of years ago. And I would say I was a like casual WWE fan. I knew pretty well who the superstars were and what the storylines were. I would check into Raw and SmackDown for, bits and bobs here and there, but wouldn't necessarily watch an entire episode. But I will say 2 years ago when the WWE's kind of face of the franchise, Cody Rhodes, was chasing that elusive first ever championship, finish your story, all of that. It felt like
Dusty.
The brand. And of course, that happened all at the same time that the Vince McMahon stuff came out. And somehow the brand didn't just sidestep the Vince McMahon controversy. It actually got to what it felt like its biggest point in terms of audience size, in terms of excitement. You didn't just have Cody Rhodes, but Roman Reigns was really big. The Rock was coming back. It felt like they were peaking. And maybe I say that in hindsight because now 2 years later, I'm not sure the brand's in the same place. You're a bit more plugged in than I am. What's your take on the journey that the WWE brand has been on over the last 2 years?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go back to 2020. That's when I started following WWE. That's when I started following it for work. And I came in at the very beginning of the Bloodline, which was Roman Reigns winning the Undisputed Championship and then carrying that championship for over 1,000 days. It's a really long time. Going up against multiple opponents that everybody on the internet were basically like, oh, well, he's obviously going to drop the belt here. And he didn't. And then it was this incredible story where Roman Reigns, somebody that was pushed as a face, that means good guy, in wrestling terms for years as Vince McMahon's golden boy, finally turned heel and built up bad guy, built up this tribal chief persona, and he got his family in line. He has the Usos, who are his real life cousins, who were his enforcers. He brought in...
And that wasn't hard. For those who aren't familiar, the WWE has so much Polynesian talent.
They're all from the same family tree, too. They're all related to the Rock.
Actually all from the same family tree. And they are tremendous athletes and also tremendous performers.
Yeah, they're all incredible. But that was kind of after the 2010s had been super stale. And you had John Cena as just the person pushed again and again. Storylines have been bland. It was all driven by Vince. Vince kind of caught fire again and found something that resonated, especially in a really hard time, where in 2020 and in 2021, it was all in the Thunderdome, where there were no audiences. They were all on TV screens. And that's really weird to watch a WWE show and try and be invested. The wrestlers also really feed off the energy of a crowd, and it's something they lost. But you kind of saw WWE start to ascend again. And that's when Drew McIntyre really came into play. Seth Rollins really came into play. But also the women on the roster really elevated their technical prowess and what they could do in a ring. Fast forward a couple years after Roman Reigns is defended at multiple WrestleManias, multiple SummerSlams, the huge PLEs. We don't call them pay-per-view anymore because you don't pay-per-view.
PLE, Premium Live Event.
Premium Live Event.
And for my Premium Live Events, I use a little thing called VPN and Netflix.
Yeah, and that's one of my issues.
Sorry, not sorry.
We went from WWE Network being $9.99 a month to Peacock having everything for $9.99 a month. Some of it was on Netflix, and then now it's on ESPN where it's $30 a month to watch these things.
And I already have an ESPN subscription, and they still want another $30 a month from me.
And that's where, like, I've really fallen off. And that kind of coincides. When Cody finished his story, that really coincided with Triple H taking over as the head of creative. Vince McMahon had been pushed out. Triple H came in. He's the chief brand officer and the chief creative officer.
And for those who aren't aware, Triple H is Hunter Hearst Helmsley. His given name is Paul Levesque. And he's obviously been a legend in the industry. And it was a huge deal for Vince to give up the reins and for him to take over. And there were a lot of questions over what direction he would take the creative.
And at first, it was really cool because he ran NXT for a long time, and there was a lot of
NXT is like their minor leagues.
yeah, it's where all the young talent is, and the young talent who wants to make a name for themselves. If you ever want to watch a really good shows, look at the NXT highlight PLE that takes place before WrestleMania on Saturday. They are out to put on a show, and if there's a ladder match, holy moly, you are in for a treat. When we were
know who Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, is, if you remember him, and you loved his style, you will love NXT because he runs NXT. And so there's a lot of Shawn Michaels culture in NXT, which is really exciting.
It's incredible. But coming back to it, after Triple H really took over, it was really fun for like 6 months, and then things got stagnant. Things got stale. We saw the same thing over and over and over again. And we're just at this point where all of the superstars for the men who are the main eventers, because when you think about wrestling, you have the main eventers who are contending for championships. They're the last match on the card. They're the ones who are highlights. You have your mid-carders who are pushing for kind of the United States Championship, the IC Championship, or they're going to be in a main event match, but you know they're going to lose. But they're there to fill in time. And then you have the jobbers who are at the bottom of the card. They're there to make their money looking up at the lights, getting pinned. All of the main eventers are in their early 40s. They're really old. They've been around for a long time. We just got done with this long stretch of John Cena's last year. And it was a year-long thing where they turned him heel, and it was really exciting at first. And then it flamed out so quickly, and it just didn't work. That in a random promo on a Friday Night SmackDown, he's just like, I love you guys too much to be a bad guy. And then that was it. Yeah. That was really it. And it was just like, that's all we get? We've waited 20 years to get here, and like, that's it?
But didn't that feel like the return of The Rock? You know, obviously The Rock was massive. He built his career in the WWE, and then when he started coming back 2 years ago, it felt like there was going to be a storyline, but he is so distracted by all of the other engagements that he has in life. It was fits and starts, and yeah, like, to me, The Rock's storyline kind of turning into a whole lot of nothing was similar to John Cena's farewell tour storyline turning into kind of a whole lot of nothing.
To be fair, Cena had a lot of really fun and great matches. He put over a lot of young talent. Gunther getting to retire him, having 3 matches with Dominic Mysterio, who I love. Dirty Dom. His character, incredible. Rey Mysterio's son, real life son for anybody who doesn't know. And then
kind of looks like an everyman. I think, you know, when people think of WWE male superstars, especially, they think of, you know, that incredibly cut physique, like Kit Harington style. And he's not that. He is so not that. But he has character and personality in spades. And he really does bring so much life to the product.
He also, when he's out of character, he's one of the nicest people you can meet, and seeing him interact with kids.
I've met him.
Amazing.
Attest.
But coming back to it, I think with The Rock, you had him involved in the road to WrestleMania, because that's where we're at right now. Royal Rumble, which is the very beginning of February or the very end of January.
My favorite of the big tentpole PLEs, always has been.
It's a very unique match, and it's so much fun. But that kicks off the road to WrestleMania. We have a 3-month sprint to get there, a lot of building storylines. 2 years ago, in Cody's ramp to finally dethroning Roman Reigns and taking the belt, The Rock came back as the final boss and was this big villain. He's on the board. He actually is on the board of TKO, who is what they're publicly listed under.
That's $20 million, I think, a year to be on the board of TKO.
Oh, yeah. Very well. He is paid very well because he was the face of WWE for a long time. But he was involved. He had a WrestleMania match, and then he kind of went away for a while. When he was the person who turned John Cena heel, it looked, to your point, like there was going to be this big deal, and they were going to go so many different directions.
It would culminate in a Rock John Cena match to end his career, and it didn't even come close to that.
No, it flamed out. The Rock kind of just disappeared, and he came back for the Netflix debut, I think, and that's maybe the last time we've seen him. So,
which, as a board member, duh.
Yeah. But, you know, we're at this point now where Cody dropped the belt, and I will give it to them. They dropped it on a Monday Night Raw in a match that looked like it was going to be, oh yay, outside interference. Jacob Fatu is going to allow Cody to win again against Drew McIntyre. Like, good on that. But we're entering Elimination Chamber. And Elimination Chamber is the last PLE before WWE WrestleMania. The winner is going to go on to face, in the WWE main event, Drew McIntyre, to go for the belt. And we're at a point where looking at who's in the match, it's like, well, it's obviously going to be either Randy Orton or it's going to be Cody Rhodes. And it's probably going to be Cody Rhodes. It's predictable. It's boring. It's just kind of lame. And that's where you saw that peak when Cody finished his story in Philadelphia. And then it maintained for a little bit, and then it's just kind of gone downhill from there. And it's been a slow decline. We've had some incredible matches. But we got AJ Lee to come back. AJ Lee, CM Punk's actual wife. And we're all kind of realizing in the WWE fandom that, was that just nostalgia driven? She wasn't as good as we remember. We have both the Bella sisters where it's like, what are we doing here? They're just with the amount.
It's actually a shame because the women's division is so strong, and
that's
the
issue.
Yeah, their aerobatics are incredible. Like they put on great shows consistently,
and they have so much young talent in the women's division that have actually made it to the WWE main roster that they're not giving the spotlight to. What they're doing with Julia is really frustrating. She came over from New Japan Pro Wrestling where she made a name for herself. She's incredible in the ring. What they're doing with, the Chilean girl who I can't believe her name is escaping, but she is the women's champion that will go up against Liv Morgan, who finally got her flowers, winning the Royal Rumble for the first time. It feels like they just haven't done enough there, where that's their young talent. That's going to be the future of the industry. And, we look at the women's Elimination Chamber match and, okay, put my money on Tiffany Stratton or Rhea Ripley. Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Kiana James, Raquel Rodriguez, it's great that you're going to be there. But the winner of that match to go face Jade Cargill, probably going to be Rhea Ripley, which, great. So we're going to put the belt on Rhea again for the umpteenth time, and Rhea's an incredible talent, but there's so much more.
An incredibly lovely person. Again, another superstar I've had the opportunity to chat with, and she could not be nicer.
I think that's my major issue is you combine this with the difficulty to watch the PLEs. It's just a tough product to follow, and I've really struggled to stay invested and stay following. And I have a buddy that I'll probably go to his house on Saturday and watch Chamber at because it's in Chicago, so it's going to be at a reasonable time. Royal Rumble was in Saudi Arabia, so it started at 10 o'clock in the morning. That was tough to try and fit in the schedule when you've got kids' activities to do. So that's kind of where I stand with WWE, where it was, how it's plateaued and kind of declined. And I worry about where the future is going to head with it.
Well, who do you think the three best male and three best female superstars are today? So if you were saying to somebody, if you want to see the best of WWE right now, go to YouTube or, go to the vault and watch these three men and these three women. One of them might be Stephanie Vaquer, who is the women's champion and is from Chile.
If we're talking about what they do in the ring right now,
Three men, three women that you think have the best chance of making somebody go, that was impressive.
Oh, Javon Evans, who just came up from NXT. He's this long-legged, skinny guy that I don't know how he does what he does in a ring. It is nothing short of incredible. Go back and watch some of the Ricochet matches and you'll get some of it, but Javon Evans shouldn't be able to move like that. It's incredible. Penta, if you want to see real luchador wrestling, his version of the Canadian Destroyer, which he calls the Mexican Destroyer, mixed with storytelling and just what makes you want to care.
He cut a match. Thrilling promos. And you know what? That's a little bit of a blast from the past. I think promos aren't as big. The story there are more kind of complex storylines now, as opposed to, when I was growing up, they'd stand in front of a camera and they'd cut a promo. And that was like a real thing. I don't feel like there's as much of that these days. But I agree. Penta is one who, man, he was born to cut a promo.
He's incredible. And then for the last one, God, you could pick so many different people. I hate to say it, because he's a clown, but Logan Paul, what he does in a ring, it's He shouldn't be able to do that with everything else he does. And I know that it's very scripted. He claims to be a full WWE superstar right now, but he is really good in a ring. Really good. So if you want to go have your socks knocked off and just see somebody do really cool shit, it's him. Now, from the women's side, Stephanie Vaquer, Tiffany Stratton, Io Sky. Like, bar none. Those are my three. Two of them are very similar, where Tiffany Stratton, who was a collegiate gymnast, and that shows in her style, and Io Sky, who came again from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Her nickname is the Empress of the Sky. Huge acrobatics, but their storytelling is incredible. And then Stephanie Vaquer, her unique brand of wrestling. And I mean, the Devil's Kiss is just, it's incredible. Like, those are the three that define where wrestling is at right now from the women's side.
Well, John, this has been a really fun conversation. I can't thank you enough for the time. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. We're going to go ahead and get that travel log up in the next couple of days, and then I'm off to Japan for another week of skiing. We'll do another travel log, but that means that we might not have a video next week. We might take another week off. We'll see. I hope everybody has a great week.
All right. Enjoy the sushi and ramen.
All right. See you, bud.
See ya.